This is Mark Mulcaster from Fantha Tracks, and you are listening to the Rebel Base Card Podcast. She may not look like much, but she's got it where it counts.
If you hear this, don't give up. No matter what.
Everything's gonna be all right, kid.
You found the Rebel Base Card Podcast.
She may not look like much, but she's got it where it counts, kid.
I'm your host, Greg McLaughlin.
Have I made a few bad decisions? Sure.
We talk about cards, collecting Star Wars, and to people in the Star Wars community.
Don't worry, we're gonna meet up with some friends of mine.
Look for special episodes called The Breakfast Pack, talking about your favorite Star Wars shows.
We will never have a better chance than this.
All right, let's get started.
Well, perhaps it is time to begin again.
Welcome back, or if this is your first episode, welcome aboard. My name is Greg McLaughlin, and this is the Rebel Base Card Podcast. My guest on the program is artist Mark Tomkins, better known on Instagram on his channel @RebelScumArt. You can find some amazing Star Wars vector art on his page, and he will be displaying some of that at the upcoming winter London Comic-Con Olympia from November 16th to the 17th. Since it is his first show, I wanted to talk to him about the prep work and, of course, about this amazing art. We'll have that plus news and notes in our homestead keeping segment right after this, so stay tuned.
You can waste time with your friends when your chores are done. Now, come on, get to it.
All right, let's take a look at some homestead keeping. I came back from vacation to a lot of boxes and a lot of packages from eBay, a lot of goodness, I'm happy to report. One of the first things I cracked open was the Star Wars Unlimited Twilight of the Republic pre-release box. Of course, there was a soft open on November 4th, then the official quote-unquote launch on November 8th. But there was the starter box, the booster box pack, and then this pre-release box, which I had ordered about a month ago. It came with a bunch of booster packs, a couple of promo cards, some counters, and a deck building guide, and some of the new rules in it. I wasn't quite sure if I wanted to go with the starter set first, because it would have some of the same thing that you can get in any of the starter pack. So there was some stuff like, well, I don't know if I really want that. I may get it at my local store just to kind of support them. But I wasn't also quite ready for the booster box. Now, if you talk to my co-host on the Breakfast Pack, Greg Cass, he went a little deeper than I did. But because I usually do the drafts, I'll probably be getting that now that my daughter's volleyball season is over. I should be able to participate back in those Thursday night drafts, which will get me some cards, get me some playing time, and then that way I can use this box and maybe some future ones to deck build. So kind of excited to crack into that. I will probably open these up on Instagram, so be looking for a live from that, just because I'm always kind of like, it's rare to get a box these days, and it's always kind of fun to share that. So look on Instagram @RebelBaseCard for at least the cards if I don't do a live on that. All right, we did get some news that Topps is releasing a high-tech set later on November 27th. And this is an online one, and this is more of a high-end set. So when I tell you that a hobby box is $139, you might go, that's not bad. But that hobby box contains one pack of 20 cards with 2 numbered parallels guaranteed per box. So it's a 100-card base set. Like I said, the hobby boxes are going for $139. The cases are going for, right now, pre-order, $16.50 and change. But this is a little different than, let's just say, Galaxy Chrome, which, the boxes were more expensive, but there were more packs on it. And definitely a lot more than the Star Wars Chrome earlier in the year, where the hobby boxes were a little more modestly priced. So I was a little concerned that we were going to be getting releases stacked on top of each other. And it does seem that, we have another one, like I said, with this high-tech release. They've done them before. Sometimes it almost feels like a plasticky type card. And I know they did have at New York Comic-Con, they did have a couple of pre-release cards for promos that you could get from the Topps booth. But with Masterwork maybe still coming, and we know some other sets are maybe out there, I could say that they are kind of stacking. Galaxy's been out for a few weeks now. I've been able to see some of the cards. I picked up some singles just to kind of take a look at them because I was pretty excited to see that Dave Dorman had some cards in there. Also excited that I did see the artist names on these. They're looking pretty good. I like the 25th anniversary mall cards. I may try to snag some of those off eBay. But once again, at this point, just given the price of some of these boxes, for the casual fan, it's kind of hard to kind of dive in. But at this point, I'm still kind of working on singles, maybe some lots, or at least some partial base sets, because I think that's just a little easier to get at this stage. And of course, with holidays coming, I don't necessarily want to soak all the money into new wax. At any rate, but I did like what the Galaxy Chrome looked like, and of course, when the breakers and so forth are done with these sets, they often go on the secondary markets pretty cheap, so they're pretty easy to pick up. If you're a little patient, you could go after not only the if you want to go for a set, or if you wanted to go for an auto or a sketch card, you may want to focus on that. That might actually be a little more, little easier to do, and a little more, on the budget side, to make sure that you are getting the cards you want, chasing the artist you like, and getting the autographs that you need for your collection. All right. I did have a chance, even though I was on vacation, to appear on the Hyperion Hub with Dan Zare, who, of course, is not only talking a little bit about his work on the new Star Wars Encyclopedia that's out, and I'll put the link to his Amazon referral link in the description. We talked to him before. Hopefully, I'll be talking to him a little more on his participation in the book. But I'm excited, and it was fun to talk with him and the Hyperion Hub guys. I'll put that link in the show notes as well to their podcast. Force Ghost Conversations. Anthony King had Greg Cass and I on recently to talk about 5 years of Disney Plus shows. I was kind of in and out because I still had to get some stuff done while I was on vacation. But it was a fun conversation, and I think we're going to be having Anthony back for the Breakfast Pack when Greg and I kind of talk about the Skeleton Crew trailer that recently dropped. And boy, it was a great trailer. I don't want to spoil it, but I will be writing a little bit about it because I am going to be in on the Fantha Tracks review pool. Mark Newbold over at Fantha Tracks was nice enough to let me join in, so I need to kind of get my writing chops back in order, and I'll be kind of writing about that and putting it some of my stuff on the Substack because I kind of want to get that back in shape, but contributing to Fantha Tracks as well. Pretty excited about it. We did get a Andor 2 release date, and no surprise, it's going to come right during Celebration. Looks like those folks who are going to be in attendance at Japan are going to be seeing it first before we get it. But it is nice that we know that Andor Season 2 is going to be coming out in late April. And boy, it's going to be amazing for those of us who enjoyed Andor. I hope you enjoyed Andor too. I thought it was really good, and I'll be excited once again to do breakfast packs with Gregory Cass and company when Andor 2 comes out. But hey, we got Skeleton Crew first, and that's coming out with a 2-episode premiere on December 3rd. Speaking of Fantha Tracks, I just wanted to put out that Mark and them just celebrated 7 years. And so if you haven't gone to Fantha Tracks, it is a full-service Star Wars news and reviews website hosted by Mark Newbold and company. A lot of folks contribute to that and do all kinds of podcasts. Making Tracks is one of their flagship podcasts that they do, and he does a fantastic job. Congratulations, Mark Newbold, on 7 years of Fantha Tracks. We're hoping for a lot more, and quite an amazing achievement to get there. Also nice to see that Aaron Harris and David Motters are back helming Star Wars Reactions podcast. Because Milton came through and did a lot of damage, I was able to help and kind of gather up, and me and some friends of mine, including Colby Mead and Anthony King and Ross Hollabin, Mary Perdue, we were able to do a few episodes and kind of get them back in. But I was excited to listen to David and Aaron back in the saddle again, and a really heartwarming episode. If you haven't had a chance to listen to episode 199, Milton was pretty scary, and it was awesome that Aaron was able to share about some of the experiences and some of the things they're going to be going through. Don't want to spoil it, but just welcome back. It was great to hear you again, Aaron and David both. I wish you many more episodes. They'll be coming up on episode 200. Wow, amazing stuff. All right. That's all we have in Homestead Keeping. Now let's get to our interview with Mark Tomkins, and I'll see you on the other side.
Hey, this is Carl LeClaire from the Wampa's Lair podcast, and you're listening to the Rebel Base Card podcast. Great pull, kid.
We're in attack position now, sir.
Hold here.
We're not going to attack.
I have my orders from the Emperor himself. He has something special planned for you. We only need to keep him from escaping.
I always know that these conversations are going to go great. I am really counting on today's one to be nice and long, because just getting some coffee from McDonald's, they have the surface temperature of Mustafar, and so you get it. It's one of those, one of the most annoying things, and there's a method to my madness here, but the same algorithm that led me to find your amazing art. And the reason we're here today is also the same one that delivers you the most annoying reels that, tell me if you've heard this one before. You're doom scrolling just because, and you'll see these just because, and it'll be like, did you know? And it's some annoying AI voice. Like I said, there's a reason for it. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. And so, sometimes, like, as I get older, it's like, you know what, if I want to drink my coffee, if I go to a gas station, if I'm on my way to a thing, and I would like to drink the coffee after I bought it, I always go and I'll go right next to the coffee maker thing, and I'll get some ice and put it in there, and I feel like they're always watching me, like, what is that idiot doing? He's using coffee. Yeah. What is he doing? He's like, no, I just would like to drink my coffee, without having to wait another hour before, because I'm like, that defeats the purpose of getting the coffee.
I know. Well, I don't really want to have a take away, sit it in the car for 45 minutes while I'm driving along, and then when it gets to the right temperature, you then, you're driving. You can't drink it.
I'd like to have a few sips and not have it go in my lap.
But I don't know whether you have those in the States, but certainly here, a lot of coffee shops, McDonald's as well, they've got these ridiculous things on the top of the plastic caps that sit on the top, and it sticks out, and you're supposed to fold it back and then drink out of this little hole, and it's supposed to be so that you can travel around and the drink won't slosh out the cup. The problem, of course, is that because it's something close to 1,000,000 degrees and hotter than the sun, even when you think that it's drinkable, you bend this little flat back and you take a drink, and of course what it does is it delivers the coffee straight to the back of your throat at 1,000,000 degrees.
I don't even, I think it's just the exercise of getting coffee more so than the actual enjoyment of the coffee itself that leads us to do this behavior. The same thing as like, doom scrolling and things like that, where it's like, I know what the result's going to be.
Yeah.
And
social habits.
Social habits. And I think somehow it's going to be different every time.
Yeah.
This is what you get first thing in the morning, but I couldn't have had a nicer introduction, Mark, because it's the algorithm that, it perplexes us when we have our channels or trying to do a thing, or you're trying to post up, and all of a sudden, it wasn't that long ago, I want to say, that all of a sudden your work started showing up, and it's been fascinating to kind of follow. But that's why I wanted to kind of reach out and talk a bit, just because I just absolutely love this style. But
well, thank you.
Can you do me a favor and we'll get the proper introductions out of the way. I'm with Mark Tomkins of Rebel Scum Art, and your style is it's not unique in that no one's doing it, but it is something where when you kind of match something a little different plus Star Wars, can you kind of give me a little bit of where did we get to here from? How far do you go back with Star Wars?
Well, I go all the way back to the beginning. I go back to a 7-year-old boy, and hearing about this thing that was going to be in the cinema, and then going in the summer with my dad to watch it. I remember a place, it was Beaconsfield cinema. So I remember going in there. I think I'd only been in there 2 or 3 times in my life before that moment anyway. So I remember sitting in there and just I suppose probably being completely and utterly dumbfounded, and coming out and thinking, what did I just see? What was that? Never seen anything like that on the telly before. And I think us purists would probably say probably not a lot since. And so it started, all the way back in 1977. I have always had a love for Star Wars. And really, the reason why we're talking is about a year, 18 months ago, I thought, well, what am I going to do when I get a little bit older? I'm sure as hell not going to run my company, and I'm not going to do any of that. I want to do something that I like and I can get a bit of enjoyment out. And I restarted drawing. So by background, I'm a graphic designer. But as with all business owners, you end up becoming just a fancy administrator and not doing the thing that you were trained to do, typing 900 emails each day. So I just thought, I'm going to start sketching. And me and my wife went on a holiday, and I took a sketchbook with me. Stupidly, didn't take a pencil. So I ended up having to go to one of these little holiday shops and found this little, I think it was a Barbie pencil. Anyway, it was a pencil nonetheless. So I set myself this challenge of doing a sketch a day, which I know a lot of artists do. And I picked this theme, Star Wars. Scenes in my head, or rather scenes that I thought may have been in the film or may not, couldn't really remember, but I knew I'm going to have a go at drawing an X-Wing, I'm going to have a go at drawing a snowspeeder, I'm going to have a go at drawing these things. And I really enjoyed it, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to kind of document it. I'm going to set up an Instagram channel. I didn't have an Instagram channel, so I'm going to set this thing up. And it helped me because I could look at other artists who were way ahead of me in terms of that journey that they'd also taken. So that's when it started. Not a long time ago, really. I mean, I go back to Star Wars 77, and I am a designer since forever. And let's just say I'm in my 50s. But as for kind of doing the Rebel Scum art stuff, it's just over a year old.
Oh, wow. You know, when I looked at the presentation, I can see a couple back there. If someone goes on your profile, what I loved is that, you have the box art, and then there's the great, the blank space and just a very small piece of text. So it has sort of a travel brochure, or there's something to it. So it's in the presentation that it just looks very slick, like a design firm. See, there you go. Mission accomplished, right?
Yeah. Do you know the reason why I did it like that was because I wanted to make sure that more than anything, I gave the image some context. I feel like an imposter in this. I really do. I mean, there's some artists out there that are just interstellar compared to what I can do. I feel like a proper imposter, but I think probably most artists do. But I wanted to make sure that when I did a picture, it would come out of my head. So it wasn't a scene necessarily that was direct from one of the films. But I wanted to give it a title, and I wanted to recognize that it was from this film and it was from this date way back, way back, just so that I could document the art as I went along. And I just kind of fell into that as a style. And I saw advertised this here in England. There's an event that's run twice a year called Echo Base, and it's run by a great group of guys who have a Facebook page, and they do a lot of charity work for a children's hospital. And I thought, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a design just for that. I didn't want to have a stall or anything, right? I was way too nervous and inexperienced to do that. But I thought, I'm going to come up with a design, and I'm going to print some postcards, and I'm just going to wander around. I'm going to talk to the people. I'm just going to give them some postcards, right? And that really, really kind of boosted my following, because people said, actually, what you're doing is really good. And there's loads of really good artists out there, but thanks. And really, that was the start. And I just a few weeks ago, I don't know why I've done it, but anyway, I've done it. I've committed to having my first stall at the London Winter Comic Con. I know the main MCM Comic Con is on this weekend, so 26th, 27th of October. But this is the winter one at Olympia in London. And I've got myself a stall in Artists Alley, and I am bricking it. That is to say the least.
Well, and that's another reason why I wanted to reach out because I'm always fascinated. I've been fortunate enough to talk to a lot of artists over the years I've done this. And, a lot would tell you themselves, more introverted. I like you, if you kind of look at the background, I have my chopper background, and, it's kind of where it is. Like you said, about a year or so ago, or a little more, I started kind of picking up where I left off when I was in high school. Probably should have just left it there. But, one thing to find with the tools that we have, whether it's a pencil and a sketchbook, whether it's Procreate, whether it's just you're doing it, because, I work a lot in Pixelmator, which is the poor man's Photoshop / Illustrator. But
yeah, I use Illustrator. So all of my art is so I'll do the sketch, and then every single piece is put together with joining pixels, right?
And it's just, it's the medium that you're comfortable with, and that's what I think, and especially, in doing Star Wars art, it's just, what, if I'm comfortable with this, then what you're doing is you're getting kind of my vision, or at least is how I see it, and it is like nothing else. But it's when you're doing this and you're just like, oh, this is, there's a forgiving nature about digital, because like with this, it's layered, and you have the ability to kind of do over and over. I mean, the same thing, like you have an eraser and pencil, yeah. But if you're working with, if you're working with oils, if you're working with markers, I'm like, you kind of go, oops.
Yeah,
but
I've done plenty of that.
Oh my goodness.
Magic markers.
Oh God, yeah. But the digital
what
tools.
What did I do?
What did I do?
Yeah.
The digital tools have come a long way. I mean, I am thinking of, like, I remember Photoshop when it was on several disks, the installation was like 20 floppy disks.
Yep.
And then I remember Photoshop 4 brought in the magical layers. I'm like, here, sort of non-destructive layers. And then, but like any tool, whether you do video or anything like this, the next trick you learn will be the trick that you will find in the next 20 pieces of whatever you're working on, because I'm like, I've figured out how to do a shadow, or I've figured out how to do a line. And I would say personally with Illustrator, it took me about 10 years to kind of really grok it, because I kind of did a lot of page layout for from newspaper ads, in part of what I did, and once I kind of treated it, Illustrator, like, I grew up on PageMaker, I know,
Yep.
Exactly.
And
so once I treated
oldest freehand.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that's taking you back, isn't it?
Yeah.
So oldest freehand. It escapes me as to who was the original issuer of Photoshop. I think it might have been Aldous, because Adobe didn't exist then.
Well, right, where the fella from Lucasfilm, him and his brother, whose name escapes me at the moment because it's 6:00 in the morning. They started, I don't know whether it was Digital Darkroom that they worked on or something that eventually was, yes, you're right, Adobe didn't start with Photoshop, but eventually it became Adobe Photoshop, the same way as PageMaker was bought up by Adobe, and then used to have Macromedia.
Macromedia was Fireworks and Dreamweaver.
Mm-hmm. Freehand, I think, right?
Freehand. No, that was Oldest Freehand.
Oh, that's Oldest.
So
okay.
Oldest Freehand, I think, was the first iteration of Illustrator.
Yeah, we're dating ourselves, Mark. But
yeah, I mean, my first job was I was a paste up artist. That was my first job. I spent 7 of 8 hours in a dark room, and I would only emerge for lunch.
Well, yeah, we had in the place I worked at. I worked for a cable company in the Pacific, and we had one PC in the office when I kind of got the marketing department, which was me, and then there was a PC with PageMaker 4, and it took me about a year of just sort of teaching myself. We had a very bad Okidata printer, laser printer, that took about 20 minutes to print a BMP image, a bitmap, and then we didn't have any clip art, and so when we were trying to do just simple newspaper ads, promoting our stuffs, sometimes I'm like, I'll just draw it with a mouse, And, you know, like whether it's a Christmas tree or whether it's something, I mean, I just wanted something in there that didn't feel, and then you had to give the newspaper. Eventually I could give them like a PDF or like a photo ready, and then it would look somewhat scanned in, but that's how they did it. You know, they were on Macs, I was on a PC, and you're giving them these images, but PageMaker is all I had. And so, you know, you have these iterations, and then we eventually got quote unquote copies of Photoshop and Illustrator, and you start really seeing what I think you realize, and you figure, like, these tools are immense. There's so much, and you could spend a lifetime. You know, what you're fortunate is if you have 2 or 3 people that are also like, yeah, I use Photoshop for like touching up photos, or I do it for this, and you go, hey, do you know how to do this? And then, you know, later on, since you're not classically trained, you're like, what's a mask? And you're like, graphic designer student 101's going, you don't know what a mask is? I'm like, I don't know. Oh, it's that thing that I do that I just discovered because I read it on a forum. But
instead of using the magic tool that gives you the hairiest line all the way around a shape, you know, why don't you draw a mask, or why don't you put a path around it? How do I do that?
So did you go to school for graphic design, or?
Yeah, so when I left like, you know, normal comprehensive school, I went to an art college for a couple of years, but that didn't go particularly well. I didn't really I don't have any qualifications to my name. I was too young to be educated. Let's put it that way. And we did this kind of end of year show to just kind of show the tutors and everything where our work was. I think I was about just short of 18, and some scouts came around looking at people's work, and this guy came up to me and he said, like your work, what are your plans for the summer? Don't really have any. He goes, do you want a job? And I said, yeah, what is it? He goes, well, we're looking for a junior visualizer at an agency in Oxford, which was at the time about 40 miles away. And I said, is it a permanent job? He goes, yeah. So I dumped college and went off to work. And that was junior. I was basically a complete junior, spent my life in the darkroom and working for this agency in Oxford. But it was a mega insight, because it was in the days before computers were doing design and artwork. So everything was hand drawn. You know, all of the magazines and the artwork was all on the drawing board with rotring pens and paste up and cow gum, and putting all the bromides onto the boards and then sending them off to the printers to make the film. You know, it's that long ago. But then I remember one day where the art director came in and he said, we've got, you know, some new technology coming in, and we're like, what does that mean? And every desk had this Mac Classic put on it. My boss had a Mac 2CI put on it.
Oh man!
And we're looking at these things, going, well, how's this going to do the artwork? And we probably spent the next 6 months kind of pushing pixels around, writing our name on the screen, printing it out on the printer, and going, yeah, maybe we can make this work. But you know, that was the dawn. That was the dawn of it.
Well, it's amazing too that when you think about the concept of a laser printer, right? And Apple's one of the big pioneers of doing that laser writer and desktop publishing. And you know, you could see like just having different fonts and so forth. And now, you know, thinking back of what you're able to do, and but I would say that, you know, you were talking before about, you know, when you're kind of in the throes of doing it, when you like whether you're doing it, and especially with a program like Illustrator, something you're comfortable working with, there is that where you can just get lost in the process, where you can just really enjoy. And I'm like, everything else gets tuned out. And if you have these moments, and I tell you, they don't come that often. Like if you get a chance where you just completely focused on the art, or you're doing this, and you just see it start to kind of come together. That I think is what is worth all those years of, like, you know, struggling with and seeing, you know, different updates and going, I wish it could do this. And now now these tools seem so much second nature, whereas in the past it seemed like we were working with, you know, bones and grass and, you know, prehistoric tools.
Yeah, very much so. I actually had one of those moments very recently where I was doing this piece, and it wasn't a piece that anybody commissioned. It was just this piece in my head. So it's a piece that you may or may not have seen on my Instagram called Do or Do Not. It's the classic scene of Yoda raising Luke's X-Wing out of the swamp in Dagobah. And I knew in my head what I wanted this thing to look like. I wanted to kind of recreate that misty, swampy feel. And I knew before I'd even started to make it what illustrator technique I was going to use to get the different layers of mist. Okay. And in my head, I was thinking of a Scooby-Doo cartoon where you get these kind of, they're layers, right? So these little tinted layers of slightly different levels of tint moving from side to side across the screen. And I thought, I'm going to do something like that, a little bit better. Sorry, Hanna-Barbera, but I'm going to do it a little bit better than that. And it was one of those moments where I just spent hours and hours putting this thing together, and I got to the bit where I was going to do the misty bit, and I just did it, and I didn't need to redo it. Or I thought in my mind I'd set out exactly how I wanted this to see, and it turned out. And they don't come along that often, but that was one of those. I have mastered this bit of Illustrator.
I'm looking at it now. I'm looking at like one of the reels, and I find now myself doing that where I start deconstructing a scene. You know, I think I got to a bit where I'm like, okay, humans, I'm just about there. I've always kind of there. I know I kind of got to a point. When I started doing Star Wars art, I started with, like droids and vehicles. But when I look at the background of this image and I see, like the trees, and I go, oh, I know how I would do this. Where it's like basically for me, I would select areas. You start with kind of a blank and you select, and you can kind of, I work with exposure, and you go up or down. Like some will be dark, some will be a little dark, some will be this. And then I'm looking at the mist, I'm going, yeah, I see how he did this. He obviously 10 million times better, but I go, and I think that's when you go, especially with some of these scenes now, I think you have to look and you go, okay, I would do this, and this. And you end up with something that, for you, it's like, I've done this a million times, but in little bits and pieces, and now you go, this is Star Wars.
Yeah, I'm going to bring it all together. I know I did this technique over here and this technique over here, but this time I'm going to bring it together because you just see it in your head. And it happens so infrequently where you see it in your head. Actually, this was one of those ones, we talked earlier on about disasters with marker pens. I did one of the pencil sketches whilst I was on holiday. Pencil sketch just for kind of composition. That was fine, and I thought I need to now work out the color tones, because you've got to get that luminosity from the background of the swamp, that glow, but also you want to get some color and dark in there. And so I did a marker pen version, and it was an utter disaster. I picked the wrong colors. I picked purple and greens and the yellows, and it was just like, oh man, I really regret doing it. Anyway, some people saw it and they said, wow, this is really fresh in design. I'm like, oh God, I hate it. But yeah.
You have words. You have actually like text, like you have words to describe what that is. I would sit there and kind of struggle going, I need it to kind of be like this, but I don't have the official phrase for it. Now when I'm hearing like, oh yeah. Oh man!
And as it turned out, my daughter, who lives in Edinburgh, she saw the marker sketch which I put on my Insta, and she said, "Dad, I want that." And I'm like, "Okay, you know what? You can have it," because I hate it. So I framed it and posted it up to her.
Oh my goodness! The other thing that I love, and that I've kind of found, so in this shot where you have the X-Wing being lifted out, in the one here, it's a silhouette. Luke, R2, and Yoda are a silhouette, and that it's another thing that I figured out. I'm going, in this instance, I don't have to worry about them. and it's interesting because, it's so all you need to do is get a couple things to kind of go, oh, that's Yoda. And all right, pointy ears, short, he's pointing, and then you see. So I'm like, it almost kind of is freeing because I'm like, I don't have to worry about filling in all of R2. And R2 was, I know, one of the first droids tackling, you go, there's a lot of things in R2-D2 that you go, all right, this is...
There is so much detail on droids. And I recently did a piece, a commission piece actually, for another artist she's a fantastic Star Wars artist. And she asked me to do a picture of K2SO. And the level of detail, when I started to get stuck into this, the level of detail, and I thought I shot myself in the foot really, because I then thought, well, I'm going to add something into the background. This is going to be a scene. This is going to be on maybe Jeddah or something like that. And in the background, I then did, I think it was maybe R4 or something like that. But I had to draw this thing big so that I could include the detail, and then I shrunk it down. And I'm looking at this thing. This thing is 20 millimeters high, but I know it's got about 4 days of work in it.
Oh my goodness! And that's the other thing too. When you start doing this, rarely everything's at an angle. Ships, droids, people.
Yep.
And I know that trying to tackle an X-wing was
you
maddening with, because it always is, it's never like straight on. Like you think like, oh, how many times have I seen straight on? You go, well, I'd rather do this, or a TIE fighter, with the foils on the side, and you're just like this. Yep. And yeah, you could sit there and just do it and do it and do it. And yeah, you're right. I think you end up finding, like me, I think you probably see a lot of, you think you've seen an X-Wing, you think you've seen R2-D2 or 3PO or the Falcon, but you haven't seen it until you try to recreate it, because you're going, I never knew that thing was underneath the wing, that little piece there, or, you're seeing it all really
very much so. Yeah, very much so. I've done I've drawn an X-Wing now quite a few times, and it really makes you focus. I mean, it's only in recent years that I've realized that when the S-foils are expanded, made into an X, inside the wings, on the underneaths of each wing, there's a whole load of detail, but you don't really see that until you've got to try and recreate it. You sure don't see it in the films. They're going by at whatever speed they're going by, which I learned actually the other day. I think they have a ground speed equivalent of 1,200 miles an hour. There you go.
Whoa.
I know, right? That sounds quite slow to me. Well, these things are supposed to be able to do light speed, right?
Oh my goodness. How long did it take you to kind of get the Falcon?
The Falcon, depending on the angle, and the kind of general composition, there was the Falcon I did in a piece called On My Way Out, which is Return of the Jedi sort of scene when they're leaving the Death Star. That's about 2 weeks of work, because every single panel is a separate piece. When you look at the Falcon is a jigsaw, and there isn't one single panel that is the same color or the same tone. So you have to draw it like that, because if you want to reflect that the Falcon is one of my most favorite ships from the entire Star Wars ecosystem. But it is also, if you look at it, it's probably one of the ones that is, well, to quote the phrase, it looks like a piece of junk. It looks like stuff's been stuck on it, but it is amazing looking because of all of these eclectic elements.
Well, and also what you end up doing especially is you have to kind of you're giving it weight and you're giving it substance. And I'm looking at like the one I'm looking at is there's an X-Wing and the Falcon in the trench. Yep. And it's just all these little pieces. And I think I try to do a Ghost, and you just sort of find that there's just so many little things going in and out, and to get the angles right and to get the panels right. And then, you just going in and you see the docking bays that are on it and the cockpit. Oh my goodness. Yeah, and
I recently did a piece, and which was actually for one of these ones for Echo Base here in England, and right on your screen. I know obviously our podcast listeners can't see it, but it's this one. Okay, so it's called "It's a Trap." Now on "It's a Trap," I redrew the half-built Death Star, and I had to draw this thing in an Illustrator file of its own because the level of detail was so much that the artwork file kept crashing. It was massive. It was well, it crashed at 25 gigs. It crashed, and then my computer wouldn't open it, so I had to start
25 gig.
Right. But if the Death Star is so detailed because you can zoom in from something that on the postcard is 30 millimeters high, you can zoom all the way in to one tiny little hangar, and you will see in the hangar, you will see Shuttle Tydirian.
Whoa. But there's the magic of it, Mark, is that when you're doing these, at least, when I'm doing some digital, I like doing these pieces separate because then it's like a box of Kenner toys or Palatoys where you can take these pieces later. Once you've put the work into, or at least, you could take a ship, you can take a droid or whatnot, but you can then move them around and completely change the story or the scene, and you don't have to waste time then redrawing something going, in this case, the Death Star, Death Star 2 is further in the background, but I may want to do a scene later where, like you said, they're coming out at the end after they've blown it up, and I just need a portion of it. So once you're done, you're done.
Yeah, I mean, in these early days, I mean, like I said at the beginning of the call, I've only been doing this just over a year, but it is more recently that I've been looking at when I've been doing a piece, going, actually, if I put a little bit more effort in now, I might be able to recycle this for something else at another time. And the Death Star is one of those. I already had in my mind. I've got some ideas in my mind for some future pieces that are going to involve the Death Star. And so when I made that piece, I made it with a view that I would have this super close-up view of the Death Star in another piece. So I wouldn't have to spend another, 4 weeks or whatever it was remaking it.
And also, when we're talking about your upcoming appearance at the Winter London,
London Comic Con Winter Olympia. Yeah, I know.
Just rolls right off the tongue. I came so close to LFCC this July because they have more than one of these, and it's the same place. And we had just happened to, when we stayed in London last, we were down in Earl's Court, which is really a stone's throw away from Olympia. And I was about 3 weeks after it had done. I was like, I didn't realize how close I was, and I'm like, all right, next time I'm going to figure out how to get here, because one, I know my way around the area, and B, it just looks like a great show. And earlier this year, Daz Davies, one of my friends, he's from Wales. He was able to go and give me a nice little report from it, and also the Fantha Tracks people. So I'm starting to know more and more people who are going to these shows. But when you're thinking about setting up at one of these, this is also where these assets come into place, because what you're doing is you're building a catalog of images, and if I was like, a lot of times when I see artists or I talk to artists about what is successful for them, one is to have a range of items. Now, you can have your highest ticket item. You like having just more than one thing.
Yeah.
Here's something where I was like, I could take an asset, crank out some smaller prints, or crank out a sticker, or crank out a button, and use that same Death Star over and over and over, because one, yes, it's done. Don't have to recreate it. But, it's just context, but I can give people going, I love this. I may not be able to afford that print, but I can get something from it. That
is something that has been ever present in my mind. What I wanted to do when I started was just find my style. Some of my early work is terrible, but I was trying to find my style and trying to work out what is my style and what can I recreate in the same style but different scenes consistently. And it's taken a year, and I'm pretty comfortable where I am now with the style. And I wanted to make sure I had a good catalogue, as you said, to be able to go, okay, I can sell some prints, or I can talk to my friends at Card Ninja and they can turn them into like these trading cards and things like that. But I've also recognized that, not everybody has got the wall space for a print, or is into trading cards. So, been thinking about, okay, what do I do with my art? Now, obviously, for the benefit of the listeners, I'm not an official Star Wars artist. I make no claim to be. I am just a fan artist. And you've got to be careful because you don't want to upset our friends over at Disney. They own the right to an unbelievable creative catalogue, and quite rightly so. And that's my role is not to trample on that or inject into that in any way. My role is just a fan, to celebrate it with some crappy artwork that I do.
Well, and I think that the nice thing that I have found, right? Yes, you don't own the IP, but I think when I think of the cards, the trading cards from way back when, from 77 to 83, and what those images meant now with things like Disney Plus, you have the ability to stream and watch this right now. I could just stop this interview, go and flip on A New Hope. It would be an awkward end to the show, but I'd be like, I'm still watching Star Wars. But those images or those cards, the posters and whatnot, those were the things that, we didn't know when we were going to see them again. It's going to take them years to go on TV. And so those things just always bring a smile. And to see an interpretation, whether or not you're doing, pencil pen or whether you're doing vector art, and there is something surreal about what you're doing where, I've seen this in some cases. You think of the Brian Millers, or I think of Joe Caronis that like to do a lot of the propaganda art. But this it has a vibe to it. There is that color that you can do, and just that feel to it that, this is just something a little different. And it looks so clean, especially with the white borders of how you're kind of doing it, where you have that top and it's almost, it has a Polaroid-esque to it. The frame, the best way I could describe it on a podcast is it has a Polaroid-esque frame to it, where
that's right.
But there's still something that's like, man, it's so clean, and then it doesn't have to have a ton of color in it. You find, you probably can find it. You go, I only really did this with boom, 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 and that's it. And you go, I can't believe you're able to recreate it, which is that. You just don't think about that.
Yeah, if you were talking about the things when we were kids, the original Topps cards that we collected, and that was it. They were in your pocket, they were in your bag all the time. You were ready to go to swap. You were ready to go at a moment's notice. You had them there, and you knew which numbers you needed. Well, if you look over my shoulder, you will see in the frame. So I framed my original Topps Blue series. I made a frame, and I've got all of the other colours as well. That's taken quite a long time. I know a lot of Star Wars fans do, but I wanted those. That was my first touch on Star Wars. I had Star Wars cards, Topps Star Wars cards, before I saw the film.
Wow.
And it was, I think it was just that visual of a little window into this world that you knew nothing about, and just the fact that you didn't really know how many there were either. At 6 or 7 years old, you've got these blue cards, and you knew there was also going to be a really big picture on the back, but you couldn't really tell what it was. And I think that's also, I don't know, it's probably just me, right? Certainly in the UK, they were wax wrappers, okay? And you got a sticker bubble gum as well. Those packets, my God, they had a smell. They had a smell, and I wish in my 54-year-old brain, I wish I could smell that again. I have actually bought some unopened Topps Star Wars card packets. I've got them. but I don't quite smell the same, and I'm not going to open it just to see if it's the gum. I reckon the gum's probably rank anyway after 45 years.
You'd be surprised how solid that is. And then, the other funny thing is the fact that, Top started off as a candy company. And so, back in the day, it was the gum, the cards that were helping to sell the gum. And you go, wow, you're leading with this.
Yeah.
But when you look back of it, and we're in the age now of everything, everybody has collections, whether they are, they're telling themselves or someone else that they're a collector. You have these little bits and pieces. But I think when you go back and you think like how so much stuff was on the shelves and we kind of took it for granted and it's always been there. Like if you go to a store now, a Tesco, or you go down, there's going to be something that's probably licensed to Star Wars that is just sort of a throwaway thing. And these were too. They weren't necessarily meant to be collectibles, but I look at them over and over again and going, it was very simple. There was only 320 cards, 66 stickers or something like that. If you had the wherewithal to get them all, but I'm like, in boxes for here it was 15 cents a piece.
Yeah, that's right.
And just boom. But
I think that was at the. I genuinely don't believe that in those days anybody knew what it would become. Obviously, nobody can see into the future. But I don't think they looked at it as being a really big thing. I think they probably chose the Star Wars license for cards or toys or whatever it was, just because it was of the moment. It was a big film. It was of the moment, and not really that much like it had been seen. But I don't really think that people thought it would have much longevity. If you think about it, a lot of the stuff was really badly made, really badly printed, and I think that is a reflection of the fact that it was like, okay, Star Wars is the really big thing right now. It's in the cinemas. Kids are going crazy for it. Let's make Star Wars things. How do we do it? Oh, there's this company called Lucasfilms who are selling the license for it. Great, let's go and make some toys. And I think, you only have to look at it here, the Palatoy story, right? I mean, if I wrote to Palatoy in Colville in Leicester, if I wrote once, I probably wrote 100 times, oh, I bought a figure or I got a figure for Christmas, and it didn't have the right weapon, or it didn't have this, or it didn't have that. And then about a week or so later, you'd get home from school and there'd be a little box posted to you, a little white, you guys call them mail away boxes with your name on it that had come from Colville in Leicester. And it's like, what is this? And you'd go up to your room and you'd open it up and there'd be a bag of mixed weapons. Definitely that you didn't have the figures for, but it didn't really matter. And I remember coming home one day and getting one of these little white boxes full of weapons and things, and also in there were the gas masks, the clear translucent ones that were not available. They were, I suppose they'd probably just chucked them in there because those were the ones that were the Hoth survival kit mail away special. I think that's what it was. You'd get Luke's belt with the grappling hook and the white backpacks, the Hoth soldiers, and the gas masks, right? But I remember getting 2 of these in this box and thinking, I don't know what I've got, but I've got something. And I would do this over and over. I think probably, as did a lot of kids, you cottoned on to the fact that they're not going to turn a 7-year-old boy away, are they? So anyway.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Now, of course, if you had a couple of those and you go back to Echo Base, which I think is is a big toy show at its heart. You could be living comfortably, or at least going, you know what, babe, you see that car out in the parking lot? That was bought with plastic.
That was bought with 45-year-old plastic that I put in the loft and I forgot about.
Which is the only way that we discovered this stuff.
Yeah.
I'll go off on a tangent just for a second.
Yeah.
Do you remember the Star Wars Weekly comics from Marvel?
I do. Yeah. And I did actually get a few of them, not that often. Our local newsagent didn't have them, so they were only really available if we went into our nearest biggest town. So I did have some. I did read them, but not that often. But my son now, I mean, my son is 21 and he is heavily into his Star Wars graphic novels. I mean, his room is just full. He came home the other day, he'd ordered, I don't even want to know how much he's spent on it, but he'd ordered this Vader graphic novel. This thing is about 3 inches thick.
Wow.
It's unbelievable. I mean, the art in it, I'm looking at it thinking this is just incredible work. And actually I'm going through the pages thinking, how long did it take this guy? But yeah, I do remember them. Just didn't have that many of them.
I was able to get one or two not that long ago, but it's interesting that it's the black and white pages. So it's like basically they took the story, the same story, they chopped it up, they added in some cases. I know like mine had a Guardians of the Galaxy comic, probably just because maybe they didn't get a whole lot and they're trying to just spread it out. But I thought it was interesting that they were doing the black and white, which is I think an interesting way now. And I've almost thought about picking up some more because I'm like, that's a kind of a different way to look once again at something that I have seen. I have, a lot of the US ones, but I'm like, I haven't maybe read it or looked at it like that. And I think it kind of delivers it in a whole new way. That I'm like,
there's lots of super high quality photorealistic manga-y style cartoon novels out there, graphic novels and things of Star Wars out there. There's loads and loads of them, but that kind of raw black and white sketch newspaper cartoon style, don't think there's many of those, and that I think a renaissance of that might be quite interesting actually, because it's forcing the artist to really focus on making sure that the illustration of the scene is telling the story at that point. So that's really important. And then of course it's also augmented with whatever narrative that's going with it. I remember seeing one of those early cartoon novels, comics, where it was more close in the styling of the Ralph McQuarrie type art than it was graphic novel type. That because there's certainly a lot of Ralph's early work where the way he illustrated droids particularly had that 1950s kind of sci-fi type feel to them, but with a much more, at the time, modern twist. And they was using acrylics and whatever. And I think that style of Ralph's in some of those early graphic novels and comics, he's my Star Wars art hero, like I should imagine pretty much every other Star Wars artist.
Jeez. Tell me about, like, in getting ready for or deciding to do this particular show, what kind of push? I'm kind of curious. What kind of pushed you over the edge and go, all right, I'm going to do it? And then, did you have sort of a moment of panic about 15 minutes after you were accepted to go, all right, how am I going to pull this off? Can you walk me through that?
Oh yeah. So it was an Instagram advert, and I don't know why. I just looked. I stopped. Normally, I kind of skip through a lot of those things if it's too comic-y. I'm not actually a big fan of Marvel type comics and all of those other things. Star Wars is my thing, and so often when it's lots of different genres, I kind of zone out to it, as some sort of people do with Star Wars. I don't know why they would, but it made me stop, and I looked at this, and it said availability in Artists Alley, and I thought, I'll just see what's involved. First of all, I thought I'll just see how much it is, because these things, exhibitions and things must cost loads of money. So I'll just see how much it is. And then I looked and I thought, that's a lot less than I thought it would be. What tricks am I missing? And I just filled in the form, and said, yeah, I'm interested. And they emailed back like literally 2 days later saying, yep, you've been accepted. Go and make your payment. I'm like, damn. And actually every 15 minutes I've been having 15-minute panic attacks, to the point at which on my home office desk, I have these running lists of all the things that I must remember to take in 3 weeks' time. The list is now down to about 50% of the things that I originally panicked about and wrote down. But actually this morning, what I've been doing is I have my portfolio, so I have the artist proof original of each piece I've done. Mm-hmm. And so I've been trimming those down so that they can fit in a gigantic AO sized portfolio to take there. And just kind of preparing all of the original sketches, which I'm going to take, and everything else. I mean, literally, this home office, you can't see this, but just down there, there's a pile. I mean, for goodness sake, I even had to buy a trolley, right, to put all this stuff in, because the email the other day said you've got a window of 15 minutes where you can drive in, offload all of your stuff, and then you've got to go and park. And I've looked at where the car park is in the loading bay and where our stand is, and it's like 1.5 miles. So I think, well, how am I going to get 37 prints and frames and racking and blah, blah? How am I going to get from that to that? So I bought this trolley. I now own a trolley.
Well, no, that's a good point, because, it's a medium, like I would say it's about a medium-sized show, but it's in London, and this is not a medium size. This is, so the logistics of, even if something like you're 40 or 50 miles, like, that would be, even for us, like we live in the Chicago suburbs, but when we go to C2E2, which is one of the big shows down at McCormick Place, you've got to navigate, the traffic to get down there. So it's going to take, however long to go down there. And you're right. For us, I have that moment of panic every time I go, because you get off the interstate and there's this little button hook. And if you miss it, you're going to be going around again. And the whole point is to get there, because parking is going to be at a premium of not only price, but space. But then I've got to figure out, and maybe I've even been to Olympia or been to one of these places before, but I've never been to the loading dock. I don't know what it is. And of course, the people there are going to be pretty much dismissive, going, you need to get this out of here. I've got 200 of you coming in the next half hour. And so you're just...
And I don't care that this is your first con, right?
Exactly.
I don't care. You should know. But the problem is, you don't know what you don't know. As I said to this woman who's one of the organisers, I said, look, I am a noob, but I'm paying my fee. I don't know what I don't know. So please give me an email with the questions.
Yeah, or at least the thing that the 500 things that people ask you. I'm hoping you have a fact, just saying, send me that, and so I can go. But and then there's the whole build up. There is the getting it set up, and then you're not done yet. You have your table set up, you've got your booth, and now you're on for the next 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
Have you kind of thought about, like, all right, I'm kind of trapped. I'm like a zoo animal. I'm going to be here. People can be flashing. I should probably work on something, but I have to kind of also meet and greet. I have to kind of be ready for someone who's going to sit there for 15 minutes and talk my ear off while someone's trying to pay me a couple bucks for this or that. Have you kind of, thought about your
I've thought of all of those and in nightmare after nightmare after nightmare after nightmare. And I just taken a view, actually, that I think if I just occupy myself, if I stick my stuff out on the table and on the racking and everything behind me, and I've made this little price list that I'm going to stick on like a little stand-up card on the table. I bought myself a little card machine so that I can take payments easily. That was easy. That was literally one of the easiest things about this whole exhibition thing. That I went on to SumUp. I don't know whether you have SumUp in the States, but there's this SumUp. You get this little device. It was 35 quid, and you connect it to your phone, and people can just contactless payments there and then. Beep. Thanks. Beep. But you were talking about, what do you do during the day? So I see all of these great Star Wars artists out there that are infinitely better than I, and I thought, I'm going to do some sketch cards, right? So obviously I can't do any of the real ones because they're not licensed and I don't work for Tops and all that kind of good stuff. So I'm going to buy some blank sketch cards, 2.5 by 3.5 inches. And I bought those, and there they are.
There you
go. I bought some top loaders as well. And I thought, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sketch some characters, some ships, whatever it is. I'm just going to sit there and I'm going to sketch these things and stick them in the top loaders and then leave them on the table. And maybe somebody, as you say, will give me a couple of quid. Maybe somebody will steal them. I don't know. But it's something to do.
And it's funny because I see, Joe Caroni. I'll go back to him because I see him. He does numerous cons per year, and it comes out, and all of a sudden, and you go, and boom, here's all this stuff, and then you're done. You pack up and you go. But it is sort of nice when you'll see the after shots on Instagram, where you'll see people that have come up and bought his art, or just people that he's met and things like that, and you go, that I think is the scenario that I would hope that anybody gets, because I think it would be tough because, like I said, you're leaving the comfort of your studio, you're out there, some people will be incredibly excited, some people will be very passive, some people will just kind of look, not say a word and go, and or you might have the next person that has a wonderful conversation, or people come up. It's such a mixed bag, but I think it'd have to be completely worth it, because I think if you don't, I think this has got to be something that, regardless of the experience, whether it's going to be harrowing or not, I think at the end of the day, you're going to be incredibly happy that you did it and pulled it off.
Yeah. I mean, it's a classic scenario of you're never going to know unless you try. And I've set in my expectations really low. Okay. The reason why I'm going is to be able to show a lot more people my style of art. They may not like it. Of course, there's lots of different styles. They might not like it, but maybe one or two people might go, actually, you know what? I quite like that. And I can talk to them. And maybe they might even then choose to follow me on Instagram, and they can see me progress and, get better than I am. And that's great. That's kind of what I'm hoping for. Obviously, it'd be really great to be able to sell stuff, but that's not why I'm going. But I do need to be prepared for that. Hence why I bought my little beep, my little card reader. But, the whole idea is just showing your wares, showing your stuff, showing you what you can do to the right audience. You could put it on Instagram, but then you've got to wait until people come and find you. Whereas if you go and do these kind of events, at least it's a warm audience.
It's an audience. Yeah, because I think depending upon the venue, let's say you were going to like a local festival or art fair where you've got all different kind of stuff. And so, the audience for something like that would be like, oh, okay. Oh, what's this? Or like, oh, I saw that. Whereas this is like, it's a pure audience. In this case, it's there's two or three, like I know with LFCC they had different zones and so forth, but in this case you'll be amongst family, and so you've got
that's right,
receptive, and they're bringing money. They're going there to bring money, and you're like, can I have some of that, please? You weren't going to leave with it anyway.
I would like to leave with some money. That would be great, at the very least, if not to pay for a veggie burger on my way home. But what I really want to do is also to be able to talk to other artists in the same boat. There's going to be guys there who are so much more experienced, done it loads of times before me, and I want to learn from them, because there's nothing better than yes, it's great to be able to make mistakes, learn, but there's a point at which you want to go, I actually need to get a bit of a leg up, and talk to other people. How did you do this? How did you do that? And that's another reason why I'm going. I'm hoping that there's going to be some fellow Star Wars artists there who are prepared to perhaps give a guy a hand. Yeah.
Well, I'm excited for you, and it's probably a good time to kind of start to bring this to a close. But
yeah,
you know, that's kind of the fun part, because it's like every con, every event is sort of like a chance to get something new. There's something fresh to it. And I think that's the reason why people go back.
Yeah,
is they're seeing people maybe they've seen before, but seeing something fresh, and to see such a fresh take like this, that it's old but it's new, and this is my contribution to the universe, and I wish you a lot of luck in this, and I'll hope for a report afterwards that it was either a disaster and I'm never doing it again, or it's like, okay, lessons learned, I figured this out, but I'll almost guarantee there'll be a gem of something going, this really worked well, and I enjoyed this, and it made up for everything else, including, you know, like the food vendors were cold, and it was rainy, and people were kind of, but there was that one thing.
Yeah. That's what I'm hoping to, just to come away having learned something.
And if nothing else, go find Michael Sheen, because I hear he was one of the guests that was just added.
He was announced, just a couple of days, I think. Yeah.
I would kill to you know, what a great actor. I mean, there's a lot of great folks there, and I like how they have Olympia has them now. They had there was like a balcony that rings the place, and I know they had some people up there. He might be signing someplace else, but I'm like, just to be in the same building and to see that go, okay, that's cool, and I'm sure he's delightful to talk to, even if you only get a couple of minutes. But
I'm sure.
All right, well. The dates once again for this are what?
16th, 17th November at Olympia in London.
All right. This will come out before, so if you are in the UK, and I know we do have a few listeners and some folks up there, spread the word. This is going to be a fun event, and I want you to come out and support Mark. You know, check his table out, give him a thumbs up, walk away. You don't need that extra Funko. Pick up a print. Come on. You know, help a fellow out. But as we watch the run up, where can people find you and see this journey?
So if they want to have a look on my Instagram, so it's Rebel Scum Art on my Instagram, and also all of my stuff is on my website, which is rebelscumart.com.
Excellent. Mark, it was a pleasure to meet you. I was sitting there going, okay, if it goes 30 minutes, I get this, but we filled it, and old friends now. So thank you very much for coming on.
Greg, thank you so much for the invite. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Can I offer you a libation to celebrate the closing of our shared narrative?
Once again, I want to thank my guest, Mark Tomkins, for being on the program tonight. It was a pleasure to get a chance to talk with him and see hear more about that amazing artwork that he does. And also, man, going to your first con, you know, setting up a booth or table or whatnot. I'll be excited for him. I'll be excited to see what happens, and wish him the best. And I hope you enjoyed that. It was always fun. I love these artist shows where we kind of find out the process and we find a little more about the person. And I hope you enjoyed it. All right, I'm going to let Card Squadron take it out, and we'll talk to you soon.
The Rebel Base Card Podcast focuses on cards, collecting, and the Star Wars community, and appreciates you coming along for the ride.
If you have any feedback for this episode, you can reach out to the program in a number of ways. You can leave a comment on the Instagram post for this episode. You can also DM Greg on Instagram at Rebel Base Card.
Make sure to also follow the Rebel Base Card on Twitter and Facebook at Rebel Base Card. If you want, you can send an email to greg@rebelbasecard.com.
And you can find show notes for this and all episodes on the website rebelbasecard.com. In the Star Wars Card Trader app, and just about every other one, you can find Greg at CornFedTech.
The Rebel Base Card uses the hashtag Card Squadron as a way to alert friends about cool cards and recent drops in the galaxy far, far away. It's a great way to bring our community a little bit closer together and help one another finish our sets in time. We collect, communicate, and commiserate. Well, at least when we run out of credits or crystals to spend on our digital collections. Join the fun, even if all the other cool squadron names were already taken. And remember, We collect as one and would be honored if you join us.
And if you are a sketch card artist, or Star Wars artist or collector, cosplayer, and want to talk about your work, your craft or passion, drop Greg a line. I'm sure he'd love to hear your story. You can also help the show by leaving a comment or review on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you got this episode.
Otherwise, the mission is clear. Keep those cards out of the hands of the Empire, and the Rebel Base card will return soon.
This podcast is not affiliated in any way with Topps, Disney, or Star Wars, nor is it endorsed by Disney or Lucasfilm, and is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. All names and sounds and any other related items are properties of their respective trademarks and or copyright holders here in the U.S. and abroad. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com.
That's it.